All right, welcome to Lab 3. Question 1, if the price in a market is above the equilibrium price, then it creates a surplus due to the unsold goods. Question 2, when the price is above the equilibrium price, greed tends to push the price down. Business owners don't necessarily like having unsold goods, so they cut prices in order to sell them. Question 3, what is the sum of producer and consumer surplus if the trade happens? That's going to be $5. For B, if the trade takes place at $4, then Vincent will have a producer surplus of $1 and Jules will have a consumer surplus of $4. And C, if the trade takes place at $4, then, oops, wrong one. If the trade takes place at $7, then Vincent will have a producer surplus of $4 and Jules will have a consumer surplus of $1. Question 4, when the demand increases, the equilibrium price increases and the equilibrium quantity increases. When supply increases, then the equilibrium price decreases and equilibrium quantity increases. And when supply decreases, equilibrium price increases and the equilibrium quantity decreases. Then when demand decreases, equilibrium price decreases and equilibrium quantity decreases. For question 5, the best way to think about the rise in oil prices in the last 10 years as China and India have become richer is that it was a rise in demand because there was an increase in price and quantity.
For question 6, this is the supply and demand curves for the loaves of bread, showing the supply in green and the demand in red. The equilibrium price is $2 and the equilibrium quantity is 35 loaves of bread. For question 7, there is a shortage of apartments because the supply of apartments is less than the equilibrium quantity. The price would increase because there would be an increase in demand as a result of the supply shortage, which would give sellers an incentive to charge higher prices and buyers to offer higher prices until the equilibrium price of $1,100 is reached again. For question 8, given the table, the equilibrium price is $32 and the equilibrium quantity is 150 of good X. Question 9, at a price of $20, sellers are willing to sell 20 pounds of sugar, but the buyers demand 40 pounds. The combination of $20 and 20 pounds is not equilibrium, and the unexploited gains from trade can be seen below as the portion labeled in the red of the graph. For question 10, if the price of margarine decreases, this leads to a decrease in demand of butter. And in the graph, we've shown this graphically, where the original demand for butter is in red and the final demand is in orange and the supply is in green. The equilibrium price decreases due to large decrease in demand for butter, and equilibrium quantity also decreases due to large decrease in demand for butter. If margarine and butter were not substitutes, then there would be no change in demand for butter.
For question 11, it asks what will happen to the equilibrium quantity and the price if the wages of sugarcane harvesters increase. So that would shift the supply graph up, causing the quantity to decrease and the price to increase. And then for part B, it says, what if a new study was published that emphasized, it's on the next slide, emphasized the negative health effects of consuming sugar? That would cause the demand to decrease, causing the price to decrease and the quantity to decrease. For question 12, it asks, if a snowstorm was forecasted, what would happen to the demand of snow shovels? It would increase in anticipation of the snowstorm. And this is a change in demand itself, and this would cause a change in the quantity supplied. For question 13, the paleo diet, which emphasizes eating more meats and fewer grains, has become popular. That decreased the demand for bread and moved the demand graph to the left, lowering the price and lowering the quantity produced. For question 14, the change in consumer and producer surplus in the area between the equilibrium prices. For consumers, this is a positive change, and for producers, this is a negative change. So they're just they're just flipped of each other. So the change in consumer surplus is $9,900,000, and the change in producer surplus is $9,900,000. For question 15, it is just talking about here's our chart talking about what happens with a increase/decrease in demand and supply. So the issue is when we're trying to figure out what happens to the combined effect of demand and supply on the price and on the quantity, it really depends on how much it increased and decreased, and that causes question marks happening in price for case 1, quantity for case 2 and case 3, and then price for case 4.
Okay, so for number 16, part A, you can see that there's a major reduction in supply, but a minor increase in demand. This comes together to create an increase in the equilibrium price, but then a decrease in the equilibrium quantity. The increase in equilibrium price is greater than what would have occurred if there was no increase in demand, but then the decrease in equilibrium quantity is less than what would have occurred if there was no increase in demand. Then for part B, you can see that both supply and demand increase, but then the increase in demand is major while the increase in supply is minor. This comes together to create a large increase in the equilibrium quantity, but a small increase in the equilibrium price. The increase in equilibrium quantity is greater than what would have occurred if there was no increase in supply, but the increase in equilibrium price is less than what would have occurred if there was no increase in supply. And then for part C, you can see that there is an increase in equilibrium quantity, a major increase an increase in the market supply, but there is a minor decrease in market demand. This comes together to create a large increase in the equilibrium price, but a small decrease in equilibrium demand, in equilibrium quantity. The decrease in equilibrium price is greater than what would have occurred if there was no decrease in demand, but then the increase in equilibrium supply is smaller than what would have occurred if there was no decrease in demand. And then for number 17, so the two goods, the dangerous car and the safe car, they are substitutes, as one can be traded in for the other. And if it's easier to produce safe cars, then the supply of the safe cars would then increase. This would cause the equilibrium price of said safe cars to reduce. The demand of dangerous cars will go down because they're substitutes of each other, and the increase in supply of one will cause the reduction in demand for the other. And in the free market, as engineers and scientists discover new ways to make cars safer, the number of dangerous cars sold will decrease. 18. So in this case, as the prices of goods that increase, as the price of goods increase, the number of people that are interested in a product that can actually pay will reduce, causing a rationing, as only people that can actually afford to buy the good will be able to. For number 19. So, and for question 19, the supply of labor in these jobs will tend to increase as more people would want to work there. And as the supply of labor increases, the equilibrium wages reduce. And lastly, in the case of radio and television, TV announcers, they have very attractive jobs because number one, they live relatively stress-free lives, and number two, the barriers of entry are less pronounced as they don't have to get the same amount of training as say actors or other people in the entertainment industry have. Therefore, the supply of labor will be larger, leading to the equilibrium wages. Therefore, their minimum wages to be lower than what would be relatively found in other jobs in the entertainment industry. Um, so this has been Lab 3. Thank you for listening.